Every surname has a story to tell. Here's mine.
Images of modern-day refugees are charged with emotion. Migrants crowded onto flimsy boats crossing the Mediterranean Sea in a desperate bid to reach Europe. Rohingya Muslims fleeing from Myanmar into Bangladesh. Or tents stretching for miles at the giant Dadaab refugee camp in Kenya. Today, we're looking at the people who first gave the word refugee to the English language, the Huguenots, French Protestants escaping religious persecution in France between the 16th and 18th centuries. So many of them fled to neighbouring countries that it's claimed that 1 in 6 people in Britain today has Huguenot blood running through their veins.
So I am here where it all began. Joseph Harwood married a Charlotte Lecan in September the 30th, 1810. So I'm not allowed in because they're doing rehearsals, but just down there is the altar where they really got married. So they actually end up letting me in, which is great. They're rehearsing at the moment for a service, but down there is the altar. So that's where Charlotte Lecan married Joseph Harwood on September 30th, 1810. I kind of get goosebumps when I say that because it's really special being really amongst the history and with my ancestors in this place. So very special indeed. Really chuffed I could get in. Charlotte was daughter of Daniel Lecan, and records show that Daniel resided here in Spitalfields in 1730, and that was just 1 year after this place, Christchurch, opened. Daniel's family would have been part of the 50,000 French Protestants, refugees fleeing from religious persecution in 1685.
And it wasn't until Louis XIV came to power and came to the age of his majority in the 1660s that he began to chip away at these liberties for some of the reasons that Ruth already went into, that he wanted more uniformity, both political and religious uniformity in the kingdom. He saw the Huguenots as a threat, and he began in legal ways, just chipping away at the privileges enjoyed by the Protestants. He called for some of their temples to be demolished in the 1670s and 80s. And then in 1681, he authorized the dragonnade, which was the billeting of troops in the homes of Protestant households that would essentially kind of eat the Protestants out of house and home in order to pressure them to convert. And from this point on, there was a much more active program of discrimination and persecution against the Huguenots that culminated in the complete revocation of the Edict of Nantes in 1685.
Ruth?
The dragonnade in 1681 began in March, and it's in 1681 that word, refugee, actually enters into the English language officially, recorded in dictionaries, in response to the hundreds and thousands of people coming out of France because of the dragonnade. The word is from dragoon or soldier, and they were known amongst the Protestant population as the booted missionaries, because they were soldiers, of course, wearing boots. The sound of the boots coming into the town, the sight of the horses and the soldiers on the horses coming into the town caused panic and resulted in literally thousands of people abjuring their Protestant faith within days, maybe even the same day or weeks of the arrival of the soldiers into their towns and villages.
Many of the Huguenots were silk weavers and played a big role in the success of the silk industry, and here in Spitalfield is where it all happened.
Today, the Huguenots who arrived in Britain are remembered for their particular influence on certain industries, like silk weaving, the centre of which was Spitalfields in East London, where about 300 Huguenot families settled. There's still one working hand loom remaining in the district, and here is Richard Humphreys of Humphreys Weavers, explaining how it works.
There'll be 2 or 3 of these in the room, and the whole family will be busily hand shuttling, which is what I'm doing here, throwing the shuttle from one hand to the other. And the weaver in the time would be pressing up the treadle up and down about 13,000 times a day.
How much cloth does that translate to?
It'd make about 4.5 yards, so about 4 metres a day.
The Huguenots were extremely hard-working. They were blamed for overcrowding in London, and these foreigners were seen as having strange dress sense, spoke a different language, and ate weird food. These are very familiar in modern times, actually. Many of the Huguenots were anglicised their names by directly translating to English, or having less French-sounding surnames, or just marrying out their surname. So it was actually like a massive statement for Charlotte to keep her Huguenot identity by double-barrelling her surname with Joseph Harwood, to have LeCand Harwood. Joseph we know less about. He was an excise officer. The Harwoods were actually connected to brewery in the 1700s. So, good on Charlotte for keeping the Huguenot faith and keeping the LeCand Harwood in the family. Charlotte and Joseph's son, Louis, was great-grandfather to my dad.
So it's really amazing to think that Charlotte and Joseph took their first steps out of this church as husband and wife, and took the very first steps of the LeCand Harwoods, well over 200 years ago. So yeah, I'm really glad I did this little project. There's definitely more to come as well. I've only just scratched the surface of the family history, but I wanted this to be a little bit of an intro for myself, dipping my toe into the family's history, the family archives, and also I've got an opportunity to go to the research that my mum did for my dad, and piece together the stories from my dad's side of the family, to really put together a more comprehensive archive of the LeCand Harwood family. I just had a quick chat with the guys in there to thank them so much for letting me in. I told them a bit about this project I'm working on, and a bit about the family history. So I kind of like to think that they're ringing those bells in that church right now for Charlotte and Joseph. Wishful thinking, but let's say it feels quite romantic to believe that's the case. Very special.
Between the train and the platform.
So I'm just on my way back from Spitalfields, and just coming into Hackney Downs. My dad was born in Hackney in 1929, so it's good to know that LeCand Harwood didn't move too far from their origins in London. Next stop, Hackney Downs.
Mind the gap between the train and the platform.
No, it's been a great day today. Travelling into London on the train, you just kind of makes you think about all the different communities in this beautiful cultural melting pot, and every family's creating their little bit of history of London. So it's really worth spending the time to kind of look into your own history, your own heritage, because there's no doubt there'll be some fantastic stories to uncover, and it's really only just the beginning for me, for sure. So looking forward to doing more in the future. See you later.
Look at Howard.